Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to season 2 of Conversations in Pop Culture, where I have with me artist and inker John Martin and Aaron Humphres. So, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Hey, everybody.
It's good being here.
Yeah, now I am very excited, and I will say this: where initially this was supposed to just be me and John, and I hit up Roland Mann, who is sort of the creator and mastermind behind Silverline Comics, and pretty much Aaron wound up joining us somewhere 11 to 12 p.m. last night. Was sort of set into motion. So life moves quickly, everybody. And so obviously I'm very excited because as I sort of tip my hat a little bit, you got a Kickstarter going on that's dealing with Twilight Grimm and Friar Rush, and it's a double feature. And so that's what's going on. And before we get into the Kickstarter, what is Silverline Comics for those who don't know? Because Roland's been on twice with a variety of other people and some of your compatriots, if you will. But I want to catch everybody up on what Silverline is.
Silverline, I mean, I know that he started Silverline Comics back. I first met him in, I think, 2000. He had it. I think that might have been his first iteration, but he might have done it before.
90s.
It's an independent
he
comic
did
company.
it in the 90s.
Did he do it in the 90s? Okay, yeah. And then he put it in the back burner, and he's restarted it, and I think it was 2018. And it's just an independent comic company. It pretty much is a collective of writers, illustrators, people from all parts of the industry coming together to just produce just awesome comic books under the banner Silverline. So that's what's so fun about it, is I think the collective aspect of it is so many people working together. That's what I enjoy. So it's a company, I mean, technically.
And there's a lot of titles underneath this company, and there's a lot of artists and a variety of them, and a bunch of them have been on, and everybody from every walk of comics, whether that's DC, obviously Marvel has come into this. I think people from Malibu obviously have been in this, and a lot of people who have been in and out of the mainstream media have come in and out of Silverline in the last few years. And so it's a very cool company and collective, and the talent pool to pull from is very interesting because you have talent that is old school and veterans, and then you have new people. And I do want to sort of state that, and that's what's so clear that you're getting a massive mixture of both veterans and newbies, and it's super cool. So having said that, I am curious how both of you came into Silverline, because obviously this has been around for a while, and there's been a few iterations of it, and now 2018, the last 3 years have been very interesting. A lot of cool titles of this, and obviously, I think this is the second Kickstarter you guys are a part of.
Yes.
For these books that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, for Friar Rush. I'm not sure about John. It's only Friar Rush? Have any of the other books you worked on?
No, I've only worked on Friar Rush so far. I'm working on another.
Okay. Yeah.
So how did you come in? Because I'm very curious.
But yeah, my story is a little interesting. When I drew Friar Rush, it was 20 years ago in the year 2000. Again, this is how I met him. I completed the series, and then he didn't have the money to go further with Silverline, and so he went back to school. Roland did, and I'm like, okay. And so he put it in the back burner. And then was it 2019? It might have been. I'm trying to think. I think that's when it was. I heard his name on a podcast. I can't remember what podcast I was listening to, but somebody mentioned Roland Mann. I'm like, I haven't heard that name in years. So I looked him up and found him on Facebook and contacted him. And I said, yeah, I used to work for you. I did this comic called Friar Rush. And he had, and I just assumed 20 years they had redone it. Like, they're not using my stuff. They've redone this. But he sent back to me my artwork. But yeah, I have a cat. And it was under a different artist's name, and I was like, well, no, I think that's my artwork, and it was my fault because I didn't put my name on any of the art. That was the thing. He didn't know who did the art, so he took this art out from 20 years ago, and he had no idea who it was. And some other guy said, yeah, I think I did that. I don't know, and he claimed it, and so we finally figured it out. And he figured out, yeah, it's you or whatever. And then he's like, well, since you're already doing work for us, why didn't you join us? I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. And so that's how I came into be. So something from 20 years ago has brought me to Silverline again. So now I'm in it again, which I'm really excited. And I'm working another project for them besides Friar Rush, which is kind of in the works.
And so what is that like? Because I don't think Friar Rush was published for 20 years.
Yeah.
And then you get to come back, and obviously you're a little bit, I would hope, more skilled as an artist.
It's definitely different. I'm glad people are seeing it. I mean, yeah, it's sometimes when I look at it, I'm like, it's stuff I obviously a lot of stuff I would have changed, but it's just cool to see that stuff I did get seen at all. And so I'm like, that's cool. And it's still readable, still works. I mean, of course, I'm always like, yeah, but my new stuff's always better and stuff. But he's giving me a new project to work on, so you'll be able to get to see where I'm at 20 years from then. But I look back at a lot of that Friar Rush stuff, and I still like some of this stuff. So,
but even to go backwards, and even because this is sort of cool where it wasn't published, and now you're getting it to be published, and you're getting to relive it and re-see it, and you're getting to see it actually get published and put out there. And it's kind of a crazy circumstance where in 20 years you would tend to think that it would have been published, and it wasn't. And like that's sort of just really cool, I would imagine, and weird at the same time.
It is cool. It is definitely cool, definitely weird, and it is definitely interesting to revisit it. I mean, it had been so long that I had to actually ask Roland if I drew all 3 issues, because I have some photocopies of a few things here, but he has all the original pages. He had all of it, and so I had to ask him, like, did I ever finish that for you? And he's like, yeah, you did the whole thing. I'm like, okay, great. So I don't have any more work to do, because I had forgotten if I'd actually finished the series in 20 years. So he's like, yeah, no, you did all 3 issues. I'm like, okay, good. So yeah, it was done. So it's interesting to go back and read it. I actually get to read it now. It didn't have words. Now it has words. So I'm like, hey, it's words and stuff. So I get to read it. And then of course John ruined the whole thing with his inking. No, I'm just kidding. It looks awesome.
Why am I even here?
No, his stuff. Go ahead.
So obviously, John, you're inking this, and you're the inker, and I'm sure we're going to talk about the relationship between the two of you in a second here. But how did you come in to Silverline? Because I think you're newer, and this is sort of your, breaking in type of position at this point to some degree, because you're newer in the industry. I think it's a safe assumption.
Yeah, I'm new. I would say I did a couple things beforehand. I did something with Antarctic Press in the Collector's Corner. I inked the pinup for a pinup book that they did called CMH Wasteland. It was a real quick rush job. Here, we need this inked. Have to get it done as quickly as you can. I turned it over in a day. And then I ended up inking over Mitch Faust on a short story for an anthology. And then, which that was really cool when he asked me to do it and everything. And then Dean Zachary and Mitch are kind of like are mentors for me.
Yeah.
And Dean Zachary at a convention, I meet. Dean introduces me to Roland and Jeff Whiting. They're at the convention. I think it's Memphis Comic and Fantasy. And I'm sitting there, and Dean goes, "Roland, you should really look at his stuff." Because I had an inking portfolio and stuff like that. And Roland goes, all right. He kind of flips through it. He goes and flips through it like 2 or 3 times during the convention. And before the end of that first day, he goes, do you want to ink a book? And this is probably late 2018.
Yeah.
He goes, you want to ink a book? I go, yeah, sure. Why not? No. Yeah, I think it was early 28. It was... I know I had some time to work on it before Aaron came back.
Yeah, I came in after you. It was, I know when I came in that you were already working on the book. I do know that.
And he showed me the pencils, and I was like, yeah, sure, why not? I'll knock it out. It'd be fun. And that's kind of how that started. And then he told me I looked like Prince Voltan from Flash Gordon. And then that ended.
Oop. There you go.
But yeah, that's how I ended up part of Silverline.
And he's been doing the Prince Volt. At least you've actually claimed that now, because Roland was like incessant on the streams, like Voltan,
I kind of wish I was at Gulf Coast Con right now because Flash Gordon himself is there, so I could have walked up and did something.
Yeah, start laughing. Yeah, he didn't that actor who played him? Didn't he pass away recently?
Who?
I'm not sure. The guy played Prince Voltan.
No.
I thought he was in the news or something. Is he still alive? Yeah, I always liked that guy. So he was in other movies during the 80s that I saw besides that one. So
People are throwing you praise, John.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Joseph.
So even to go further, so obviously John started working on this book, and then you come in, shoot the message to roll on, and then what was that experience like? That your book's getting inked, and then you finally join in, and now you're part of Silverline, and that you actually get to start seeing all this start becoming, and then this could sound a certain way, but becoming a professional comic book versus just pencils, and that entire process, and seeing your baby actually start to come to life. Because it must be weird, because comics are cool and I like pencil work and I like black and white stuff, but seeing the inks and seeing the colors and seeing this entire process and now seeing what it was supposed to look like must be a very odd experience. And obviously this is 20 years down the line now.
Yeah, so it definitely was. It definitely is. And I love his his inks. And there's some stuff where I'm like, was that supposed to be? Because I can't remember exactly everything. So I'm like looking at the art going, was that supposed to be a shirt? Or I'm like, that's good. No, it's really fun to see it come to life, especially with the colors and the words, and see actually, because I mean, it'd been so long. And that was my first kind of break into comics 20 years ago, was doing this series. It didn't, really go anywhere. And then I went and did other things. So coming back, I'm doing my own series, and I do ink my own stuff from time to time. But it's always nice to see my stuff done by somebody else. I rarely get my stuff worked on by another person, so it's really fun to see that. So
I know if you go through with a fine-tooth comb over the pencil pages and ink pages, you'll see where I subtracted some lines and added lines.
Yeah, which I think is all part of the process, which I actually like that. It's because I'm getting John's get another eye on my art. And so he can oh no, this isn't needed or whatever. I'm like, hey, good. And that's it doesn't bother me if people take away stuff. I mean, if you're deleting entire characters, I might ask why. But
So to even talk about that, because inking is complicated, even coloring is complicated, where I think there has to be some discretion to the inker. And I think the artist also has to learn how not to take it personal, that maybe, an artist sees something and says, hey, you need this extra line there, or there might be an extra line in somebody's gauntlet on their character, for instance, or an extra wrinkle that doesn't make any sense per se. And removing that type of stuff, or that for whatever reason, something is just not lining up artistically. So what is that like, with knowing that you could trust your inker has some discretion and not taking it personal, because it's not attacking your artwork. And I know that some artists can't do that, and they take everything personal with their art. And so what is that like, building that trust? Because I think that goes to the relationship a little bit.
Yeah, so far, I mean, John's the first guy that's inked my work, because I've been inking my work for years. And now my comic that I do on my own now is all in pencil. So it's published in pencil, but apparently I've done it well enough that I've confused people who think it's inks. So go figure. But it's interesting, and it just and I'm like with John, the artwork, I'm like, go for it. I like to see people's interpretation of what they do with my stuff. And I learned to let go of this. I mean, when I did a lot of client work, they work in motion graphics. I mean, I learned a long time ago to take the personal out of the art, because I mean, people change and tear stuff apart, and I'm just like, long as you pay me, dude, we're good. I don't care, as long as you get. I mean, I look at it as like, you're paying me to do this for you, so whatever you want, that's fine. But inking and stuff, no, it's cool, and John's really good at it, so it's exciting to see him. I think you're done with 2. You're on 3, right?
Yeah, I'm starting 3 after I finish the other one I'm doing.
Yeah, you're doing the other book.
I want to talk about that in a second here, but I do want to dive a little bit into the Kickstarter, because I think it's super interesting, because this is a double feature, which means that there's 2 books. So one book is sort of one way, this way, and you get to flip it and reverse it, and it's called a flip book, which is an old school thing. For those who don't know about old school comics used to be one side was X, and then the other side you sort of flip it into it that way. And so there is a whole nother story done by another team called Twilight Grim. And the basic premise is that, well, a city got divided because of a war, and there's vampires on one side, and they might or may not be preying on humans and sucking their blood, and then the other side doesn't seem to care. And there's a lot of stuff going on with that. And me and Roland have spoken about that because Rob Davis was on with Roland and a few other people. And so a lot of stuff's going on with that. And well, sort of a mystery vigilante type hero is defending the weak. So that's the first book or the second book, depending on how we look at it. And so that's in there. And then obviously there's your book, which is Friar Rush, which we're talking about. And so that's on the other side, and that's the other story. Once you either flip or you read it first, hopefully everybody will read that story first. You know, we're rooting for them for that one. But anyhow, what is that like to be part of a double feature? Because it does change the way the book is marketed and how it's approached and things of that nature, because you have another 4 or 5 people who can push it out there. Yeah. And so what is that like, knowing that, hey, you know, you have more eyes can get on it, and that if Rob Davis is pushing the book, it's not necessarily pushing your work, but your work is attached to it. Like, legitimately, you cannot separate your work out of the book.
Right. I think it's great. The more the merrier. I like the flip book format. I think it's fun. And I think it's unique, the fact that you only get the flip book, I think, in Kickstarter. I don't think you can get these outside. You buy them in the store. So the fact that you have, like, I had these flip books, it's kind of a unique item that you get. And I don't mind. It's always fun to see who I'm teamed up with. I think last time it wasn't Grim Fandango, it was Bloodlines. I think it was the last book that was flipped. And so it's always interesting to see who's coming along with this. But I mean, Rob Davis is an amazing artist. So having him on there, and I think it was R.A. Jones was the writer, right?
Yeah.
And so having those guys on there, no, that just makes the Kickstarter all the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, and I think it's super interesting. I actually like this concept because it is a bigger book also, and that, you're getting more story, you're getting 2 stories, and, you're getting 2 different entire things. And I like the concept of what Roland has thrown out there with the double feature out there. And so let's actually talk about what Friar Rush is about. For those who don't know, you guys are on your second issue with it. It's 3 issues, and the basic story is that Friar Rush is sort of a trickster, definitely is not like people in the cloth, doesn't like to seduce them and maybe manipulate them and punish/torture them for whatever reason. And basically Friar Rush basically wants to jump to the future, brings his medieval trickery, and wants to devastate a lot of people in New Orleans. And basically we have 2 characters who, one of them sort of failed in, I guess, religious studies, and the other is cursed by Friar Tuck and is immortal, and they have to stop Friar. I just said Friar Tuck. Wow, clearly, Friar Rush. Obviously, it's Friar Rush. I don't know if I said Friar Rush before, but it's Friar Rush. I definitely want to correct myself for the record here, but obviously they want to stop Friar Rush from doing the damage and more or less, I'm assuming, free one of the characters to some degree. So where did this entire idea come from? Because I know that I think Sidney Williams was the writer on it, and you're the artist on it, and obviously writer and artists have to work, and then John's the inker, and it's sort of making decisions a little bit with the art as well. And so where did this entire concept come from? Because it is fascinating where it's going and what's happening and who's doing what and how you got all these things playing out.
I can say a little bit on what I know. I can't speak for Sidney because he wrote it. I do know Sidney on there. I'm an acquaintance of his. And I think John, I think we all are. You know Sidney, And but once they gave me the script, I was the one who designed the Friar Rush character, and I put some. I mean, he has these long, like hair, like 2 long hair. Those are supposed to be inverted horns, like double horns. So it's like he's wearing them down. So the idea is that he actually is supposed to be almost like a devil. That's always thought of him as like a devil trickster, somebody to basically come and, if they could steal people from the cloth, what more way to go against, God or whatever, than to steal people away from his religion. But other than that, the more I developed it, the more I really liked some of the ideas. I could talk. Seraph's origin is revealed in issue 2, so I don't want to go too much into that. Seraph is the angel, and her origin is really cool. And I'm actually really hoping we get to do more Jake and Seraph, because I would love to do another story with Seraph and Jake, especially Seraph, because I think there's a lot of really cool stuff we can do with that character. And I don't know if that's a possibility or something
She's
that
definitely more
likes.
Interesting than Jake is right now.
Yes, definitely. So, yeah, that's what usually how it created. Again, jogging my memory from a long time, my ideas and thoughts creating this. Tried to give Jake an interesting coat. John knows that the coat looks very different than a regular. I was just trying to make, because he's a reporter, so I'm like, well, I gotta make this. I didn't want to give him the typical, gumshoe type coat with the reporter. I tried to do something a little different, especially with Seraph too. So, do you have any thoughts on this, John?
Well, I came in on the back end, so I mean,
yeah.
And even to talk about this, I'm sorry, what was it?
I was handed pages that were just penciled. I didn't even, all I do is I get to actually see the pages, and I can tell, and I can follow the story just looking at the pages. Because when I get them, there's no words. I don't see a script. I follow. I'm looking at it. I'm like, oh, this right here is pretty cool. And as it goes, there's a whole lot more expressiveness to the forms and figures and stuff. I'm like, all right, this is starting to get. You can tell when it's starting to get good. It actually the story tells itself very well with just the pictures.
Yeah, that's tough. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and even to go further into this, because obviously we have very interesting characters, we have very interesting character designs, and so even just building that out, because right now, and I know this is 20 years old, and obviously fast forward 20 years, I think characters matter. I think the industry as a whole wants more interesting characters, and they want better character designs. I mean, people who know me know that I'm a big Zenescope fan, and one of the things is that you look at a guy like Ebas, and there's a variety of other artists who have developed a bunch of those characters and have developed concepts for these characters, and those concepts have remained relevant for 10 years because they're interesting. And I think that's something that where you do need an interesting character design now. And I think even 20 years ago you needed it, and now more than ever. And when you look at this book and the art that I've seen and everything that's on the Kickstarter, it's clear that it's going to catch your eye. And then even just making sure it's inked right and all that stuff, I think it's super important to that degree, because it's like, oh, okay, this is different, and now we're not looking at another X-Men mutant. I'm looking at something very different. I'm looking at something that sort of catches your eye and makes you stop. I think that that's something that maybe you were ahead of the curve a little bit on that one.
Yeah, the Fire Rush character, that character is my favorite, even drawing him today. I actually did some new pictures. I actually got to redraw these characters a little bit, and it was fun to go back and redraw them. Trying to remember how I was doing it. But Fire Rush, because he's just like pure evil, and so you can always sort of, he's on kind of this meat character who's not really like physically violent. He's just manipulative. So very much like always scheming. But yeah, I definitely, and most of the time when I design my own characters, I usually try to design a character around a sort of like a central motive or one idea, and then sometimes I try to subvert that. Like I just designed a character for a book coming out, was just this. It was supposed to be a character who was this very big, like tank-like character, like a guy, and I was like, and he had like all these guns and whatever. And I was talking to the writer. I'm like, well, instead of having it a guy, what if it was like a 50-year-old woman who was like this badass military lady who was like this vet? And I was thinking of Vasquez from the movie Aliens. Like, what if Vasquez, if you know who Vasquez is, like, what if she's in her 50s and like this military vet who's like this badass? I'm like, what if we did her? And he was like, that's awesome. I'm like, just taking a character instead of the big strong guy, like, well, let's subvert it and make it this older lady who's like just as tough as badass as the guys, and like give her a bunch of armor and stuff and just run with that. So I like to kind of subvert tropes. find tropes of certain characters in comics and then twist them around a little bit to make them unique. I've always been into that.
Yeah, and I think that that's super important because I also think that obviously things in the last 20 years in comics have changed. I think that there are a lot more people interested in not the big two anymore. I think obviously in the last 4 years, Kickstarter has become bigger than ever, especially in the comics. In the middle of COVID, well, I think there was only 2 or 3 sectors that grew, and comics were one of the sectors that grew in the middle of COVID with Kickstarter, and I don't foresee it stopping anytime soon. I think that in the month of September in 2019, there was like 178 projects on Kickstarter around comics, and I think there was like 218 or 230 at the same time a year later, which means that it grew exponentially. And whether that's for, there's 2 schools of thoughts where more people are producing comics now on Kickstarter, or everybody held back. And that's the other thought with that. And when 2021 comes around in September, for that particular year, we're going to find out which it is. But obviously, I think that more interesting characters is out there. And what is that like for you, John? Because obviously you're inking a lot of this stuff, and you're getting to see a lot of this art from 20 years ago, and then you're inking it now and getting that old school comic stuff, because obviously it must affect you as an artist as well to see that progression.
It's helped me grow some, actually, as an artist, as an inker. It's helped me grow some because it's a totally different style that I'm used to. So when I got into it, I was kind of like, okay, so there's areas I could play with, and there's areas where I was probably a little bit looser than he probably would like, but it was trying to add a little bit more life to certain images and things like that. It was fun. It was fun to play around with. Anything that was really big changes, I did message Aaron, like on this last issue that came out. I know Aaron remembers a particular panel I talked with him about. You know, but other than that, the characters have been fun to work with, and I've been lucky enough to where, I've actually been able to do a couple of covers. The first cover was a fluke, actually. I was just doing something to do a print for the Silverline store, and it ended up becoming a cover, and I got to do, and each cover is one of the characters. So Seraph was the first cover, Jake's the second cover, and then I'll have Fry Rush as the third cover.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna talk about some of this stuff, and I got some pictures to show, which will be fun to talk about. So obviously, I want to talk about the rewards with this Kickstarter. There's a bunch of stuff that's sort of cool, and I actually kind of like what Silverline did with this Kickstarter, where you have a very minimal reward list, and then you have a bunch of add-ons, which I actually like that approach more than your traditional Kickstarter. And I kind of like this idea where you can be a little bit more selective of saying, hey, I think you have, and the rewards you have is obviously you have the digital version. And so I'm curious how both of you feel about digital, because I think digital is the best thing out there. And I think that, a while back, 2 years ago in the indie comic world, there was a big debate where people weren't prioritizing digital. And now I think everybody is prioritizing digital because I think it's leaving a lot of money on the table. And so how do you two feel about digital comics and it being an option for Kickstarter backers? Because I like it for 2 reasons. A, it's fast and it's cheap. And when I'm backing a bunch of Kickstarters, I can't go drop $20 every single person I want to back, but I could drop $8 or $10 and I could back 2 Kickstarters versus 1. And so that's how I view it as a reader. So I don't know how you two view it in that realm.
It don't bother me. Some people don't like to lug around a whole bunch of physical copies. Some people don't have the space for physical copies. So, digital is a lot easier. There's people that, haven't bought a single movie now that prefer to stream everything. So it's everybody has their thing. And you have those people also that like to buy the books and keep them safe and don't read them but still want to read the book, but they don't want to crack the physical one, so they get the digital one as well.
Yeah. I pretty much digital does take away the collectability in that. You can't collect. Digital's a copy. So does physical. If you're a collector, I just assume you would go more physical. If you just want to read the comic, then digital is an option. And I think digital's fine. To me, I prefer reading physical, and the only reason why is because it's hard for me to read stuff on screen because the light is being projected into my eye on a TV on a monitor, and it's a little easier for me to read a book where I don't have that. It's after a while, like it bothers my eyes. But I read stuff on cosmology all the time. I just read it in spurts and go that way.
And I think it's great, and I think that for the longest time, Kickstarters were not often digital, and I think that was a big mistake because again, people like both, and it hits different audiences. Not to mention that in the middle of 2020, and I interviewed somebody where they couldn't ship a book to Argentina because you legitimately physically couldn't ship something to Argentina because they closed their entire shipping center into their country, and also international backers as well, where it is harder to ship a book internationally, where it could be $25-$30 to send something to Australia. And so obviously for those people, digital is the cheapest option. And so I think that's something that's major important to understand, as well as that, in the US and even maybe going into Canada a little bit, it's physical copies are easier to get to. It's when you leave the United States, going to the UK or China or Australia, it's very expensive very quickly, especially for a small order. It doesn't add up. So I think digital is the solution to that. And then obviously there is the physical copy of this. And so I kind of want to talk about the physical copy. Hopefully I have the right cover on this one. And I think these are the physical copies.
Yeah, those are some. I'm not sure what cover. Yeah, I think some of them are like variant cover. I think those are both done by Peter Clinton, who's a fantastic artist. And then one of the covers. But yeah, those are for the physical. And I think you can get multiple, so you can choose your cover. Now, I haven't done Kickstarter yet, so they've done the add-ons. So I'm not sure if you can order the book, and then I would assume in the add-ons you can choose the cover you want, if I'm not mistaken. I think that the one thing I will say, strangely enough, when it comes to digital, if you do buy a digital book, the cover may not matter as much because the cover is just another page. When there's something kind of cool about having a cover and a physical, because the cover is actually the first thing you see when when you close the book and throw it down, you just see the cover, and so you can kind of see that cool artwork over and over again. Technically, you don't need a cover for a digital, even though you can put it in there. It defeats the purpose. You could just have physical, digital pages.
Those covers are the Kickstarter exclusive, meaning that
yes, some of those, and there's a few others. I think John also did an exclusive cover for Kickstarter. So yeah.
Well, I'm not going to show a bunch of this stuff because I do want to talk about it. So obviously this is another cover that is out there, and this is the retro. So what the retro is, for those who don't know, it's a colored cover, but it's black and white, and it's a very different feeling with reading comics, because now you're just getting it black and white on the inside, how they used to do in the 90s. And so it's very cool. And I think that you did the cover for Friar Rush.
Yeah, this is my cover. And the other thing that's kind of cool is this. So if you know anything about Silverline, they're talking Silverline was done in the 90s. The way Silverline is done on the bottom and the way the #1 issue, that's the way we originally did it in the 90s. So the retro is actually a representation of what this comic would look like if it came out in the 90s instead of now. So it's an homage to the old way Silverline used to present stuff. Yeah.
And then this is just also the art of what it looks like, without anything else going on with it. So obviously you could check that out with it. So that's something to also look if you want, more of just how it looks.
And I think these originals are for sale, isn't the? I think John inked all these, and so I'd assume they're all for sale too. I think the ink covers are, or whatever. I had to double check. I know all the interior pages for issue 2, physical interior pages, are for sale. That's the other thing.
Ones are not the inked ones. There's 4 inked pages, and then all the pencil pages.
Pages are yeah. And so, and I still do most of my comics traditional, like the graphic novel I'm working on for myself, like all physical pages, just because that's just the way I did it. But there is like I can sell those, so I mean, and I just think that's kind of cool. I mean, and digital. I mean, you could do the whole thing physical, still do digital copy. I mean, I have digital copies of my book or whatever, but there was something fun to be able to own pieces of the art.
Yeah, I like original art. I like commission.
Yeah.
One of the things that's actually happening, and it's actually a real issue, is that unfortunately there are a bunch of digital artists who can't do commissions. And I've heard stories where there's all these digital artists who used to do physical, and then they're at a con, and then somebody asks for a commission, they agree, and it takes them like a half an hour to get reacquainted with drawing on it,
Yeah.
and it sounds crazy. And it's not like they're a bad artist, but like they have to sort of get off their iPad or their tablet or their Photoshop on their computer to actually relearn how to draw a commission using a Copic marker. And so it's kind of a crazy scenario. And I also think that original art is very cool. I also think this original art isn't all that expensive, all things considering. So if you like a certain piece, that's something that you can obviously pick up, and you never know what's going to happen with original art. I'm speaking next Saturday somewhat about this topic, especially on indie comics at a virtual con. And this is definitely going to be something that I'm going to be bringing up, where all these Kickstarters, especially with younger people, you never know when they're going to explode. And having a piece of original art be super helpful. And so this is a great opportunity to get a piece of the original art.
Yeah. It's funny too that people are having trouble going back to traditional, working digital, because I did some digital stuff too. It's not like I haven't done it. Digital, and this is going to sound weird, creates a safety net for you, because you can always undo it. You have to go in a little more pre-planning if you do it traditional, because if you can only erase on a piece of paper so many times, and then it's gonna and I've erased and messed up, and you can scan it and fix it. But if you're doing something that's a straight traditional to somebody else, you got to be good enough not to make too many glaring mistakes. And digital does give you that safety net with layers and the way to undo and stuff. That a little bit. I think John, you are you ink some traditional, some digital. You do both. It's all digital now.
Traditional. It's all
Traditional. Okay, now.
100% traditional.
Yeah, which I actually prefer that. I like that. But
100% brush.
Which is that makes to me that's always that's what I still. And you can go into topics. There's still some stuff that digital can do that I can still tell when something's done digital and something's done traditional. It's getting harder to tell, but I can still have a pretty good eye where I'm like, that's on a computer or that's done traditionally. But most people will never tell.
It's very interesting because there's a few people who still actually color very much traditional as well.
Yeah.
They color with Copic marker. And it is insane what they can do with that. And it is a wild thing. And they don't do anything digital or anything that way for certain books and certain projects. Yeah. And there's one artist, and she does that for her book. And it's a very, very different experience. And it's mind-blowing. And so that's something that's super cool. And I can't tell, per se. I can't tell when people paint something or brush something or do it, digitally. I could tell digital colors versus that type of Copic marker just because that's an easy tell. But I think that I'm not that good. I wish I was, but I'm not that good. So that's something that is super cool, though. That I didn't even know that. Because inking is crazy, and I know very little about inking. I know way more about pencils and writing and coloring.
Right.
And so, I mean, I'm curious because I think this is super interesting because there's very few inkers that come on. What is exactly inking besides just the obvious? Like, when you brush, or can you line it, or how does that all work? Because I'm just curious on my own position. I think a lot of people are as well.
Well, I mean, basically what my job is to go in to do right by the penciler and and go in and bring depth, texture, and mainly those two things to the page. And ease to it because I can use one tool and I can get a really big line or a really thin line and just kind of flow through. Um, yeah, but
So
I mean,
when
it's
you
just
use a brush, what is a brush versus like a pen versus a marker or like how does that all work? 'Cause that's what I'm really curious about because I think everybody understands the depth side of it. I think if anybody's ever seen Chasing Amy, there is a inker which is which is banky.
and I've heard that a couple of times, and I've gone to hand them a brush pen, and I actually have a couple of blue lines just sitting there waiting on them, and I'll hand it, and I'll sit there and I set them on the table and I go, y'all give it a shot. Go ahead and try to
Yeah.
make it look professional because there's a whole lot into what you're doing, um, especially with the brush. That if you're not careful, you'll screw it really easily.
Yeah.
Uh, you'll end up screwing up some of your depth, things like that. Or if you're not trying to, if you go too fast with a brush, you end up with a lot of dry brush when you're wanting a lot of really simple hatching and nice, thin lines. So there's a lot to it. It's almost like you know brush inkers and tattooers have to deal with pressure a lot. How much pressure they're
Yeah.
doing to in what they're doing. There's a lot more pressure in handling a brush than there is handling a quill or tech pen. You go with a thinner tech pen, and if you want the line thickened up, you just double it. You don't have to change your pressure at all. It's pretty simplified.
Yeah. With my inking, I ink everything with the brush. I used to do some technical pens, and now I'm just pretty much straight brush with
Yeah,
inking. But it is all about pressure.
the only time I use a tech pen is when I'm doing a lot of very, very technical, like straight lines.
Yeah.
Like
That's usually
I
when I use it
did,
too.
I'm trying to find my Raphael Sable over here. There it is. Yes, there it is.
Yes. Those are the ones I have. And I
Um,
usually use like number 2. That's usually
yes,
my
this is the
go-to.
number two.
I
But
just find it
it's
super fascinating because I know nothing about this. There's been very few people who are inkers that have been on, and I find that and obviously I'm going to say something somewhat insulting, but I think gets the point across is that the joke of Chasing Amy is that Banky is called a tracer, and I
Yeah.
don't think inking is tracing. Obviously there is a position of adding depth and bringing things outward and different, brush strokes and making a bolder line versus a shorter line changes
Right.
where things are, and it's also positioning where something is because if something is closer, you might need a shorter line versus a bolder line to create depth and all that stuff. And so I just
Right.
find it super fascinating how all that works, and even just using a brush versus other tools because again, nobody who's really been an inker has sort of stated any of this, and I think it's super important because I do think it's a lost art as well.
Yeah.
a lot of your big names actually started out inking, like Todd and Jim Lee, and a few folks. But I will say, if you actually to get a really good look at the differences each inker makes, I think they still do this thing where the Inkwell Awards gets a bunch of inkers to ink the same image, and then they auction them off. And if you actually look at all those different inkers that are inking like a Jim Lee piece or a David Finch piece, you see the differences. Like I remember one year, it was a Jim Lee piece with Superman holding something like a tank or something over his head, and all the different inkers that inked it, you could see how the differences in each approach and what they considered was more important in the pencils that they were inking.
Yeah, they would pull out different things depending on, and some, inkers will add blacks and do its depth of line. So general sense is like even when you ink the lines, and you could do this in pencil, but most inkers take care of it. Where the shadow is, the line should be thicker, and where the light's coming from, the line should be thinner. Not too many people do that anymore, but if you look at a lot of traditional old inking, you can see that. I still think a lot of good inkers still, and I know John pays attention to ideas and rules. It's just there is definitely an art form to it, and I think it was something that was start. I mean, obviously it started because the printers back in the day, and couldn't print pencils; they had to print inks, and so they had somebody have to go over this stuff in ink for the printers, and that's where it started. And I think it just became an art form in itself. I mean, is it technically necessary today? No. I mean, you could draw. I mean, when you draw a comic digitally, you could just draw it in black. So you're basically drawing the comic in ink instead of in pencil. But I do feel that there is something still very much comic, I guess, booky and cool about doing pencils and inking over pencils.
Well, you lose something too because you're losing somebody else's eye on that work.
Yeah.
That maybe they see something that you didn't see that can take it to that. It may be a great looking piece, but a real good inker is going to take that and take that piece to another level, inking it that you may not expect.
Right, and that's definitely true.
And then even going off of that, I mean, I would also imagine, because we were speaking about how, if we have 5 different inkers taking a look at a Jim Lee piece, if they ink it a certain way, that's going to affect how something is colored. Because if all of a sudden you have more black, you have to use a different color palette if you want to make it pop. If you're drawing Superman and there's more black in Superman and there's more shadows, you might have to go with a particular blue or a particular red to make it pop off a little bit more to get what should be Superman versus if it's less black. Or if you want to, have a darker, Batman and there's more black and more of a drop shadow per se, or certain thicker lines, and you have more of a starky look or more of a slender look because of the inks on it and how that's all done and how what's gone over the pencils, that's going to change what colors you use so that you get that pop off or you get that not pop off. That's what you're trying to achieve. So obviously, I think that's something that people also don't understand because you have to ink it and then it gets colored, from my understanding.
Yeah, inking some of the colors. Like I said, digital has changed the rules so much because you could, I mean, there's people who do comics with photographs now. It's very rare, but it's out there. Comics are doing with 3D models. I've seen that. So there's lots of. And I'm not gonna say they're cheats because I don't think they're cheats. It's just ways of speeding up the process. But I do think inking is and it is kind of a lost art form, especially traditional inking. That in fact, so the type of brush we use are called sable brushes, and sable brush is made with real hair. It's made from a hair from a weasel, and I think I can't remember what country it's from. In fact, there has been a ban because the weasel's endangered, and they take the hair from the tail of the weasel, and so they have banned the making of sable brushes, shipping to America and I don't know if the ban is lifted or whatever. But so most brushes, if you do like paint brushes or whatever, are made of synthetic hair, and so when you flip the bristles, there's more of a bounce. They'll bounce back faster. Sables are not like that. Sables will bend and kind of they're more flexible. And since it's raw hair, it also comes to a point easier. And that point, that hairline point, is what gives it its power. I mean, John would know this intrinsically. I mean, the fact that you can get to that point, and that's what the pressure, the more you push down on a particular line. So it is all about pushing the line down to whatever. So sable brushes are a little different. They used to be really expensive. They still are. I mean, they used to be $25 per brush when I used to buy them. They weren't cheap. And but you can actually shampoo them, the real hair. So you clean them with shampoo. I've heard people do that and stuff. So the tools are starting to change. So it's a little harder to sometimes find these traditional tools. And I know the traditional inking is kind of becoming lost a little bit because most people do digital. But I still prefer traditional. And I think by going digital, they are losing some of what made inking good. I don't know how to explain it. There's I think tips and tricks that are starting to be kind of collapsed in the digital where people aren't doing it. So one of the biggest, when I watch people ink or draw online, they'll draw a line and then continuously erase the line and keep drawing the same line over and over so they get it perfect. You didn't have that option when you did it traditional. In the first line, that's what you got. So you had to practice a little more and be a little more, develop your skill, a little more concentration. Yeah, I don't know. There is a difference. I've inked digitally and I've inked traditionally, and there's a difference. I still prefer traditional. So,
and obviously, I kind of want to exit a little bit of the inking. I want to get back to this entire comic because I do want to show off what John is working on, and this is the cover that John has worked on. And so this is the black and white. I think this is also the original art with it, and this is also a cover you can pick up as well. So how did this come about? And I'm going to show the full color and where it's all going in a second here, but obviously I want to give everybody a flavor of what this looks like. What was the process behind all of that? Because I'm super curious about that one. And then I think this is this is part of it, and then I think also this is a few others that are out there as well. We got the cover A, and I think that's the cover B.
I mean, I was just having fun with it, and being that it's got kind of like some of those religious inclinations in the storyline. When I did the first one, which was Seraph, which I got right here, I was doing, and it's another play on this cover right here. Which is it's stained glass behind the character. That's all it is. And then I'm trying to figure out how to kind of go from there, because I was looking at stained glass windows and that big thick black in between the in between the glass shards. That right there is really well known for like old medieval Gothic churches. So.
Yeah, I like the fact that you kept the motive for the new cover. That was there could be companion pieces. I thought that was cool. For the third one, are you planning to do a Fire Rush with the same pattern in the back?
I'm gonna do something a little bit. I'm gonna similar but different.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Because he's doing all like, and I don't know why I didn't even think of it. He's like, oh yeah, 3 characters, 3 covers, perfect. And but yeah, it's I definitely like how they are almost companion pieces.
Yeah, and to even talk about this, because obviously, and I know I'm going back to the well a little bit here, but obviously you get to have a bunch of new covers of this entire series of Friar Rush, and what is that like as well, to really get to have that new stuff in there, and have new covers, and have all these exclusives, and have them on as add-ons, and also have new ideas, meeting old ideas, and sort of having, I guess, old school meets new school. And it's not the traditional new school. It's this idea of 20 years in prior, I guess, from the original art to get a cool cover like this one. And I'm going to show the black and white again because I think this cover is awesome in many ways.
I just think it's cool to see other people draw my characters. I've always been fascinated to have other people interpret my characters because my style is definitely different, and see how they did it.
Yeah, the person who's coloring it, Mickey Clausen, he showed me a sneak peek of the colors. That they're not done yet, but they're pretty close. Oh man, I'm getting like a kid when I see them. Like, they excite me.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be. That's one of my favorite covers, and I like the Peter Clinton one. It was me, Peter Clinton, and you. We don't have another guy, and I think there's 3 covers to it. Yeah.
Yep.
So. I think I showed all 3, right? Like, I'm making sure.
Yeah.
Because we can go through this again.
Peter's is the first one that's also part of the flip book.
So this is the first one.
Yeah, those are
those who are interested, and I think it's like $18 for the physical copy. And so obviously, if you like this, and this is exclusive to Kickstarter, so I have a feeling, and correct me if I'm wrong, that eventually I think you're going to be able to get some of this stuff off of Kickstarter, but you're not going to be able to get an exclusive Kickstarter book. So if you like this book, you should back it and get it on Kickstarter. So that's the first book, and that's exclusive to Kickstarter, meaning that maybe there might be a few left over, and that's a big maybe, and I can't make any guarantees. So if you like this book and you like the way the Kickstarter looks, you should back the Kickstarter. This is the second, which is an add-on, and this is the retro style, or maybe it's the third, depending on how we're counting, but this is the retro, and obviously that's the black and white. And then this is the, I guess, covers A's and cover B's. And so obviously you work on the cover A, which is more, I guess, traditional, and I think the colors aren't done yet. And then obviously John worked on the cover B, I want to say, and so which is this art for those who want it to see it more what it looks like in black and white, and this is the cover A that you could add on. So obviously that's how that looks, just raw art. And so this looks raw art. So this to give everybody an idea of what's out there as far as rewards and adding ons and all that stuff. So a lot of cool stuff. And then obviously the other thing that is also interesting, and I know Rob Davis is doing commissions, and you're also doing commissions of stuff. And I don't know how much is left over because you guys are fully funded, which I didn't mention. It's super important as well, which is good, which means that this book is happening. But I don't know how many commissions are left for people to take a bite at, but this is a type of commission you get at a con. And so what is all that, and how does that work, and what is it, the commission's already done, or is it a custom commission? How is that all working out?
Oh, it's a custom. So basically when you order a commission from me, I think Rob Davis is also, you just tell me what you want. Like I drew Sergeant Rock, The Punisher, and then Fire Rush last time, but I didn't get those till afterwards. And then they just let me do what I wanted, and then I sent it back to them. So yeah, basically it's just tell me what you would like me to draw. I have talked to another person, and I get a sense I know what's coming in one of them. But it's always fun and exciting to see some of the characters that I'm asked to draw. So
and so obviously this is a physical reward, right?
Yes, you get the actual original art.
Yeah. I'm making sure because there's digital and physical, and I want people to know exactly what they're getting so that.
No, there was one guy who framed my stuff. He actually got to see it in his house framed. I'm like, yay! I knew what ended up. So, but yeah, it's completely. It's a pencil piece, but it's completely physical. And then I don't know if you want to pay John. You can pay John to ink it.
I'll ink it, or you can scan it and send me high-res blue lines and a high-res thing of it, and I'll ink it blue lines, and you can have the pencils and the inks together.
Yeah.
And so what is this like for you? Because obviously, getting cool characters to draw, I'm sure that you get things from Marvel, DC, and others, and maybe other people have some other cool things they want thrown into that. And so what is that like for you to get to do those commissions and also sort of get a bit of a challenge to some degree? Because I would imagine as an artist, it's always fun when someone says, hey, I want some obscure character from like the X-Men for something. And you never got to work on the X-Men, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a fun thing. Because I send out commissions. And I typically, when an artist is sketching for free, I say, do whatever you want. And then usually they go all ham out. And it's happened where somebody's taking up like 2 book-fold centers. And like everybody's asking for like a tiny little Batman, and I said, "Hey, do whatever you want." And like Ryan Brown just went to town on a book of mine because I said, "Do whatever you want," and he's like, "I got this," and he just starts like going crazy, and he left no room for Charles Soule to sign the curse word, which was hilarious. And like Charles had to like sneak it in like a 45-degree angle. It's a really funny picture. But anyhow, what is that like to really get to just have some fun with that and have things that you don't normally get to do?
That's the funnest thing. It's just knowing, because I obviously have certain subject matters I like to draw and stuff. So it's definitely fun to, when I think the Sergeant Rock one, I had to look up reference World War II stuff. And so that was fun to go and find references, because I still hunt down references all the time. The Punisher was fun, but Sergeant Rock was the one that I think was the most fun. That was the one I'm like, oh, World War II historical stuff. Oh, that's fun. And so that was fun to do that. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine, and then obviously, just getting to play anything with outside of this, and also original art is
Yeah.
super cool as well. Where this is all
Yeah.
custom, and custom art is something very cool. Whether it's a commission, whether it's a commission on a comic book. I've only done one commission on a comic book, and I absolutely love it, and it's super cool, and it actually got a lot of likes on Instagram, which is awesome on the artist's page. Got like 7,000 likes in like 3 days.
That's cool.
Crazy. And it was a Zenescope book, and then they're showing it off to me in the booth. And meanwhile, it's off to get graded. It's the funniest story to me. So everybody was like, a bunch we were talking about at this con, and it was like, what? And then I was like, yeah, this is my book, everybody. And so that's kind of what I like, and I also like custom stuff as well. And then also the other reward I want to talk about, and I just want to mention this really quickly, is the fact that you're going to get a signature card. Every $18, gets you a signature card on it. So obviously I think it's a card, and so it's not on the book, but obviously it's associated with the book from Twilight Grim. So that's very cool as well that I wanted to mention really quickly.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind too, that when you're backing an $18 or more, you're going to get a signature card. And then obviously original art as well, as we already mentioned. I do want to mention that super quickly because you can pick up a bunch of cool stuff, whether it's your work or John. I think you have some original art that's going to be up there as well. And then obviously Ron Davis, original art. So there's a lot of original art. And this isn't the first time Silverline has done this with a Kickstarter. So I do like the fact that original art can be purchased.
I think that's the number one thing I like the most about these Silverline Kickstarters is I look at a lot of Kickstarters and they don't always sell the original art because they do it digital or whatever. But the fact that there was a lot of Silverline Kickstarters that have had original art for sale, and that to me I think is always a huge bonus and a huge service that we give that sort of owning traditional, because that's the stuff. Because most, I think, I'm trying to think beyond me. I've seen it maybe one or two others, but most don't. It's all digital art, so they can't sell it traditionally.
I do want to say that there was a piece of original artwork that was added either yesterday or today, and that's the inks for the Twilight Grim exclusive Kickstarter cover. It's done by Peter Clinton and inked by Barbara Kelberg. It's Barbara. That just got added also.
Okay, yeah, that's worth it. I mean, Barbara and Peter, that's it. That's definitely a powerful combination.
Barbara's been on. She's been on with Roland and Ron Davis. So obviously, if you don't know Barbara's work, take a look. And Barbara has done work for DC way back in the day. Not to date anybody, but a lot of these people, as I stated before, is that if you go through Comic Vine and you go through comic history, a bunch of these people at Silverline have worked for the big two in some capacity. Ron Davis, I think, has worked on Star Trek and Quantum Leap. So when you actually look at a lot of these people's original art, you're not buying somebody who has been necessarily on the indie comic front, but you've been you're buying people's artwork and people's inks and their books that have worked on a variety of awesome projects that you may not even realize dating back 30, 40 years at this point. So obviously for everybody watching this, keep that in mind, that when you're buying art and looking at original artwork, a lot of these people who work on these books have been around the block more than once.
Yeah.
I don't know how much more I can sell here. I'm trying to sell.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
I think the one thing is I do like the idea of because sometimes the Facebook, I mean not Facebook, Kickstarter, sorry, the Kickstarter, it looks like there's not a lot of prizes, but once you choose your pledge, then you open up this entire store of add-ons, and that's when all this other cool stuff comes in, which is a new feature. And I have actually not gone through it. I've had it explained to me, so it's almost like you get to pick up your book, and then they take you to another room with all these extra wonderful things that you get. And so that to me is kind of cool that you can just go in and shop, so you don't have to, that these things aren't tied to a specific pledge, that you can just create your own package.
I've only done one backer kit type of thing, and that was for Jamie Tyndall's project. and one of my favorite artists, and the commission was done by Elias Chazos, and he has an add-on book that was exclusive to being a backer. And it was very, very interesting at checkout because now I can go and get anything I want that's relatively on the Kickstarter. And so now I can actually choose, and I could add on, I can modify, and I can get certain things that maybe like we're in a bundle, but I could get, just one of the things in a bundle. And I think it's a game changer in a lot of ways. And I kind of like that, where I like the concept. I'm a big funnel guy. I love ClickFunnels, and that's what Kickstarter really is. And I think BackerKit allows for massive upselling. And that's what it is. And they legitimately took that concept away from ClickFunnels. I'm willing to put big bucks on that argument because what BackerKit allows now is it allows for massive upselling. And I find that, if Roland was to do this Kickstarter with all the original art as prizes or pledges, it would be a nightmare. You would have legitimately like 50 extra tiers that nobody would look at. And
that's
the fact
he has done.
Yeah,
I know, and then it didn't look good. No offense to Roland, and then he could yell at me. It was not a good look. I'm sorry.
There was no other way around it. I mean, it was like, how do you, unless you started combining like 4 pages into one tier. But this way, they're all on there, and you can pick and choose. Yeah.
And so
part of this is waiting on Kickstarter to do this. Kickstarter had to implement the whole thing where you actually had add-ons.
Yeah.
And then they're slowly rolling it out to everybody else. And Roland was sure to say, "Hey, I want to do this."
Yeah.
Because he knew it would be so much easier than what Kickstarter looked like, which is tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of things you back to get. And sometimes he'd get messages and say, "Hey, but I want this, this, this." Well, he'd go in and make a tier just for that person so they could get that. And now he doesn't have to do that. It makes it easier on him. It makes it easier, for the backers. It's a lot cleaner and easier to find stuff.
Yeah, and I want to table this for 1 second. I do want to talk about one more reward that I think is also ultra important, where you can get pretty much any back issue from Silverline as well.
Yes.
And I want to mention that super quickly because this is issue 2 of both of these books. And so let's say that you are really interested in this story and you want to jump in, you can get issue 1, and it will be printed for you and sent to you. And so I do want to make that crystal clear that, you can now get the first 2 issues, so you're not missing anything in that regard as well. I think that's also super important. But anyway, now I want to talk about Kickstarter because I think that Kickstarter has gone through a massive evolution, in the last 3-4 years. And I think it's ultra important with BackerKit. Obviously, I think COVID has changed the game. Obviously, Keanu Reeves, Scott Snyder coming in to Kickstarter, I think has been a benefit, but also I think we've also cracked open Pandora's box to some degree, where we don't know the consequences of big names coming in per se, and I think it's going to be a while before we actually fully understand what the ramifications, both good and bad, are. But what do you guys feel about it? Because I think BackerKit is a massive improvement, as we were just speaking about. I think that more people on Kickstarter is good, but also more people can be bad at the same time. Obviously, COVID has affected a variety of stuff, as we were speaking about, and I sort of dropped where I think for 3 or 4 months there was less projects on Kickstarter and everybody was ramming it through, and there's only so much money. I don't have an infinite amount of money to back every single Kickstarter that comes up, and when I have a problem. I have a lot of friends who run Kickstarters, and I'm like, what am I going to back, and who do I choose? Because if they're all running within 2 months of each other, I can only pick 1, 2, and 3. I can't pick 6. And so, how do you guys feel about navigating all of this and where it's all going, and where what the future of crowdfunding and Kickstarter is? Because it seems to me that at this point it's grown, but when it grows, there's only so much money that can go around, and things are going to sort of not fund.
Yeah. I can say for Kickstarter, I support some stuff here and there. I think it's the same analogy of the internet. I think when, people try to do this stuff, there's so much stuff on the internet that it gets lost in the the ocean. When you should do independent comics to get them out there. At comic stores, less competition. Now anybody could do their comic, and they don't need to. And sorry against all the indie comic artists out there, whatever, but not all the stuff looks fantastic. There's some stuff that is very subpar in talent and stuff, and there's some that's great. And you would hope that the fantastic stuff would rise to the top and the not so great stuff would go to the bottom. But it seems like there's so much of it that just gets lost in the voices or whatever. And at Kickstarter, the more people go on Kickstarter, pretty soon it's like, well, what's the point of doing Kickstarter if I'm on there and there's like 400 other Kickstarters and mine is never seen because it's just lost in the shuffle.
And also, I think the problem now is that a lot of stuff is somebody might have a piece of crap, for lack of a better word, and they just know how to market it really well.
Yeah.
I have an idea that is going to be the antithesis of this, and a few people know it, and I don't want to disclose all of it because I think it's going to do really well on Kickstarter, and it's going to be social satire on this entire point because it's going to be a marketing play just as much as it's a comic play. And I think that's part of the problem too, is that, and I'm on the other side of this equation where I am clearly a marketing tool for a lot of people's Kickstarters. And so and I'm not the only one. A bunch of podcasts are. So obviously, I think that's also part of the problem now is who are you going to market to? And you could have a great comic, but if you have no market or no traction, well, it's not going to get discovered because there's so much of it out there.
There's so much. And I think also people are tired of, not tired, but Kickstarter used to be unique. When I remember when they first came out, when you see a Kickstarter, it's like, oh, somebody's Kickstarter. Oh, that's cool. But now when you go through like Facebook or everything, I mean, the amount of Kickstarters that I scroll by, it's just nonstop. And it's like pretty soon you almost just kind of ignore them. And I think a lot of people, like, in other words, if Kickstarters start to become a nuisance to people online instead of something they want to, look into, that might be a problem.
So I'm going to embarrass you for 1 second, but I think it's going to prove the point. Where last night you posted in a comic group that I'm a part of, and I saw that post, and so I think who's the mod. He's been on my show 3 times, or one of the admins, and there's nothing bad about this. But the reason why I'm asking it, phrasing it this way, there's a point to be made. Where how many Kickstarter posts did you see when you posted?
When you post it on there,
you get my point, right? You know where my point is going. Where you probably saw at least 4 or 5 right off the bat, give or take, in the first few seconds, and it's like, wait a second, this isn't helping me. It's great that people are promoting, but this is now when there's 4 or 5 or 10 people promoting. And it becomes a problem because it's like, okay, this isn't unique. Now all 10 of them are the same blended together.
Right. That's the biggest problem is Kickstarters used to be unique. It was a unique idea to crowdfund. Now it's become the norm. And when things become the norm, it's not so much people ignore it. It's just, it doesn't pop out in people's, it's not unique. I don't know how to say it. It's not a unique experience. People
I'll give another analogy.
Yeah.
WWE's been around forever.
What is? I'm sorry.
WWE.
Okay, yeah.
They become mundane. They become the standard. AEW pops up. Everybody's excited. They do 90,000 people watching their first pay-per-view. Right? Because now this is exciting. It's different. It's not the norm. Now they're starting to become a little bit more the norm, and now they're blending in. They got about 2 years before they fully blend in. But I think that's the idea there, where now when I see a Kickstarter, I'm like, great, who's got a Kickstarter?
Right. And I think one of the things I think that is kind of maybe hurting Kickstarters a little bit about. So, and this is my own personal taste. So don't take this as a reflection of other stuff. But most indie people who create comic books wear their influences on their sleeves. I mean, in other words, I usually like sci-fi horror comics, but I have to dig through 9 or 10 superhero comics to get to those. And so a little bit is, I think sometimes the unique, like if you could bring a unique comic to Kickstarter, something I've never seen before, I'm going to look at that more, just the uniqueness of it, than another guy in a cape. And I'm not saying there's a lot of people that sell tons of guys in capes, but pretty soon it's just kind of like they all kind of start to blend in, not just in the fact that it's a Kickstarter, but just the subject matter starts to blend in to kind of be the same story pitch, the same idea. And with sometimes if you could do something really unique and something I've never seen before, like I backed one, I can't remember the name of the comic, and I backed it, but it was like this astronaut guy. And he had like a skull and this astronaut, and the skull was on fire, like almost like Ghost Rider, but it was like green fire. The whole image just looked cool. I've never seen anything like it. I backed it just because it was unique. So I think that the part of it that is uniqueness of the project you're bringing, plus the Kickstarter. I mean, if you're doing, another guy in a cape, which I'm not saying that's bad. I mean, that's your thing. That's your thing. You may get lost in all the other people doing capes unless you do something completely unique that no one's ever seen before. And then people might stop and be like, "What is this all about?" So,
well, I think that's where it goes. Kickstarter is almost kind of like social media. You have to make yourself stand out in Kickstarter, just like you have to make yourself stand out if you're trying to, build a fan base on social media.
exactly.
And that is a difficult task. So, what worked 2 weeks ago may not work this week. So you have to try to evolve with it and keep going with it. So I think one thing that I know we have fun, and I know me and I know Aaron, we're all really excited about comics. So that actually comes through on the Kickstarters straight up from the top guy himself, Roland. When Roland does on that video, he's not, hey, I got another one to show you. He's like, hey guys, check this out. I got another Kickstarter going, and this is what it is. He's upbeat about it. He's really excited about it, and that's not a fake thing. That is real deal. That is Roland 100% every time another book's he's looking at the books, just looking at them before they even get to that point.
Right. And I think, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think authenticity is a big thing. I also think knowing your audience is massive. And I think that at this stage, I think being different, I just backed the Kickstarter just based on the cover. I saw nothing like it, and it was a tribute cover to something that I enjoyed, and I thought the story was good. I think the story was better than, probably a little bit above better than good, but I think the story was phenomenal, but I thought the cover art was slamming good. And I was like, oh man, I just want to get this thing graded and hang it up on my wall type of art. And so that attracts me with Kickstarter. I'm like, oh man, I never seen anything like this. Super cool cover, super fun. Just makes me smile. And I dropped $25. I'm like, boom, I'm done, man. This is awesome. And I didn't really care about the story because I'm like, oh, dude, this is awesome. And I interviewed the guy, and we were speaking, and I'm like, dude, this is an awesome cover, man. You convinced me to buy your book because it's a cool cover. And so, and images in comics and how things are done makes me, want to buy stuff. And then I'm also going to be back in another book in April or maybe first week of May. It's coming. And super cool, just concept. Whether the book delivers or not, I don't know at the point, but I'm sure I'm going to get an advanced copy of it. And he's sort of a friend, and I like the concept of where this is going. So that also, and it's been done before, and it reminds me a bit of Bang Tango by Joe Kelly and Adrian Sabar a little bit in that vibe. But that's what his book reminds me of. But it's still an awesome concept. Nonetheless, and so different. So that's what gets me going with Kickstarters.
Well, even superhero. I mean, I'm not. I've kind of been burnt down on superheroes personally myself. But if you show me like a really cool superhero character that a concept I've never seen, I'll look into it. I've done superhero stuff. I just think as Kickstarter becomes more, there's only so much you can innovate in the Kickstarter platform. That when you want to keep that edge of innovation to get seen, then it falls to the creators, which I think it always has fallen to the creators. But I think it used to be a little bit that Kickstarter was unique enough that you were actually kickstarting it at all. Now that has become the norm, so now the innovation has to be on the creators themselves. I think it's more shifted towards that than just being unique, the fact that you're kickstarting a project. So.
And now I want to. What were we saying?
I was just going to say the innovation should have never left the creators to begin with. We always need to be
No.
coming up with new concepts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I think I think Kickstarter's biggest problem probably is creativity versus and standing out more than anything else. But I do want to shift to talk about COVID because clearly, COVID has messed up a lot of stuff. All of 2020 was sandbagged. Obviously, cons didn't happen. Pretty much Emerald City onward of 2020. We're past the Emerald City mark in 2021. Vaccinations are rolling out, but let's all be realistic. San Diego said, hey, we're not doing it this year. And when we do it, we're going to do it in a very different way in November, from what I hear. But I'm not putting money on that anytime soon. How that's going to be a nightmare. New York Comic Con's not going to happen. I'm in the New York area. I'm in Connecticut, but I'm close enough to New York that New York Comic Con is not happening, nor am I going. Anytime soon, I can tell you that. Not anti-vaccination. I'm just saying that I would not put money that the vaccination is slowly rolling out. My parents are getting their second vaccination shot in the first week of April. I'm not even scheduled yet. I'm having a hard time getting an appointment on 28th. Right. So I don't know where you guys feel the cons are going and where things are going to be going and going back to conventions. I know one's down in Florida. I don't know. I know John, you're in Tennessee. I don't know where you're at.
I'm outside Portland, Oregon.
And so obviously you're very familiar with COVID and all that and what's happened because you guys were sort of hit first.
We got hit. Yeah.
So where do you guys see this is all going with cons and even have businesses conducted and signings? And I know Roland was just with a good friend of mine, Travis Gibb, down in Florida doing a signing, I think like yesterday, of all things.
I think California and New York are going to sit back and watch everybody else do conventions before they do it. So I'm pretty much going to go ahead and say right now, don't expect it in California and in New York. Don't expect a convention at all for 2021, especially in California.
Yeah,
it looks like that's not going to happen out there. Now, I know in April I've actually got one in South Carolina, and they put out this huge guideline on what they're doing and how they're doing things and the whole nine. And there was places last year, towards the end of last year, that were doing cons, and like there was no huge outbreak. Like they were able to do cons and keep things kind of moving, and things were fine. Artists were fine, and it was fine. If you go, hey, if you want to have nice things to a bunch of, comic book geeks and nerds and stuff like that, who we all are, you go, hey, you want nice things, then you're going to have to do what we tell you. You're going to have to follow these guidelines. They'll do it.
Yeah.
I know.
I know there's a Rose City Comic Con that I go to up here in September. They're selling tickets for that. I thought that was going to be canceled as far as I've known.
Is a complicated company who's behind it, and they do Anime NYC, and they're selling tickets. They're selling tickets in Washington D.C. And they also pushed Awesome Con back to August, and I don't have a problem with them, and they've been pretty good to me. But I also think that they are a little bit out of touch on that one, especially in New York. I think in Washington D.C. they're out of touch a little bit. And I don't think that they're playing with a full deck. And they run Rose City, and I don't think that they're playing with a full deck. I really don't.
So because I know they're selling tickets now, whether or not it's, by the time September runs around, if you get enough vaccinations or whatever in there, there's always a risk. So we'll see how they go. They might push it. It's still very, very early to say what's going on with that.
Haven't the numbers declined and starting to and have leveled out some?
Yeah, the vaccines are starting to decline them.
Yeah, things were declining. Are on. We're on the backside of this.
And, Vancouver, Washington, where I live outside of Portland, our numbers, I read an article that we were actually kind of the best place to visit during COVID because we kept our numbers pretty low. and I have no idea how we did that. I'm not even going to introduce it, but I've heard that.
I'm very skeptical, and I'm also very pessimistic, which means I'm always right. And so,
wow.
so I am very, very pessimistic, and I don't think that this is all 2021. I think it's going to be like 2020, and I think that we're going to have problems at cons. I think we're going to have outbreaks, and I think that it is going to be problems. I think it's going to take a selected few people, and I don't think these vaccinations per se, I don't know how effective they are. And again, I'm not anti-vaccination. I just think that it's just a powder keg waiting to explode. Like, I really feel that way. And I think it's going to be 2-3 years before that is subsided. I really think that.
Yeah, I mean, you have to look at it from anything from this idea of science. The only way you're ever going to know if this stuff is working is you have to actually do this stuff to actually see if you're going to get these results. Now, again, even coming from the idea of science, you could do conventions in California and get a very completely different result than doing a convention in Washington outside of Portland because of the numbers and because of we may be masking up and doing more social distance in California. So to say you're going to always receive the same outcome based on any convention, you're going to receive the same outcome. That's obviously, you can't say that. I mean, that's impossible to say. So the only way to actually go forward with life, with the world, is start testing those boundaries. Okay, let's test it. Okay, all right, let's pull back, and you just have to keep pushing forward and forward and forward. So even though you may think it's going to break out, the idea of not testing it, well, then we'll just stay this way forever. You have to test and risk these things in order to start pushing forward to get life back to where the world's going to work in. If you don't, you can sit here forever.
That's a fair point, and I'll concede some ground on it. But my entire position is that I do think that some places are going to do better than others, by definition.
Oh, yeah.
But Florida is a good example of that, where that's going to be different. But what just happened in Florida is that they're like, we don't want anybody down here on spring break. Miami just declared a national emergency.
Right.
I don't know exactly why they declared their national emergency, but clearly things are happening, and also different parts of the.
Well, they allowed it last year, and it wasn't a good move, so they're not going to allow it this year.
That might be true. They might just be preemptively just saying, "Hey guys, we don't want you here for spring break. We got enough things to deal with, and we're on the decline, and we just don't want to push the boundary because we're beating this back and we're vaccinating people, and we don't want people traveling from other parts of the country coming down here." Which makes complete sense.
Right.
Yeah, because last year they allowed spring break in it, and everybody just went and acted. There was no social distancing. There was no masking up. Everybody was huddled up in piles, and next thing you know, everybody was sick as a dog.
Right.
And I also think with cons, I also think that there's going to be a very strong discouraging of if there's a con in Portland, Washington, don't come from New York. I think there's going to be more of a local sense. And I think that's going to be a big change as well, both for financial reasons as well as the fact that I don't think you're going to have an Emerald City Comic Con, attract people from all over the world. I don't think you're going to have that so quickly.
Yeah, I can see local cons working much better. Now, again, you're opening the con. I mean, you're looking from the fact of the opening the con and presenting to the public. The public has to show up. Now, there's no saying that we're going to do the Rose City Comic Con and you may get half the numbers showing up, even less. This is the same thing with movie theaters. Yeah, sure, the opening movie theaters of people showing up. Some, not really. So, I mean, there's that trust broken there. But you have to constantly present the option for them to do that, to build that trust back again.
I also think you sort of hit it on the head a little bit, where I also think that right now people are economically in weird situations.
Yeah.
Some people are great, and some people are also in really bad positions. Mm-hmm. And if you're in a bad position, you're not going to a con. As much as you'd like to go, it has nothing to do with safety at that point. It has to do with what is economically feasible.
Right.
So that's the other thing. And then also it gets into with all these celebrities and all their guarantees and all the big money. I've said this before as well, where when cons do open up, it's the big money that's going to make all the calls. Because when you're guaranteeing a celebrity $50,000 and every autograph counts against their guarantee, and then all of a sudden only $40,000 goes to them, you have to make up that position. And then all of a sudden the con is also going to have to rethink their position the next year and the year after that. And also, if you're a celebrity, you might say, hey, I'm going to wait this one out too. You might be in that position saying, is it really worth me making an extra 100,000 this year or an extra 300,000 and have this entire circumstance and then build a bad relationship with the con, them owing me money,
Right.
all sorts of complicated economic things. And also, I think people in this country in particular are now in a more saving mindset versus a spending mindset because of COVID. And I think people have sort of woken up, and I'm a big Dave Ramsey fan economically. And I think people are very much on the Dave Ramsey position and not the Robert Kiyosaki plan, where they're more saving. And I think that's also something that's going on as well in this country that's going to affect cons.
Yeah. The only counter I would say to that is there's still people who want some form of entertainment, and comic books are pretty low cost initiative. But the price ticket for conventions are different. Buying comics
I think with comics, I think that is not affected completely. I think going to a con is.
I think the con is the ticket.
$100 ticket is a massive expense, and then at a con, I mean, things just get expensive real quick.
Yeah.
So
John, you were going to say something?
I was going to say that when it comes to conventions, the more conventions that happen this year, everybody's watching those conventions and seeing how they do. Like we saw some of the conventions at the end of the year last year. So that, I think most of them were down in Florida and a couple of other places, but they actually did really well. They limited the number of people that came in. Which is also what they're doing in South Carolina, at the con that I'm doing in April. And I think in that way you can still you can control how the flow of things and keep things under control and make sure that everybody's able to keep their distance and all that stuff. And as the year goes and people are doing it, and you have people saying, all right, we're going to do the con, we're going to do this, this is what we're going to do, and this is what other cons have done that have actually worked.
Right.
And that's what's happening right now.
And I think that's what's going to be the change in many ways. Is just how things are structured and how things are gone. I don't think masks are going to go away so quickly. I think that's something. And I was speaking to somebody, I think last night or the night before, and he said, "Hey, I might just continue to wear a mask at a con, because who knows what's out in the con, and people even after we get past COVID. I mean, there's the flu and all sorts of stuff, and con crud is real. And so now all of a sudden, if you're wearing a mask, if it reduces your chance by 25%." Even 5 years now from COVID, that might be the new norm in certain social gatherings for a while, which I think makes sense. And again, I'm not anti-mask. I think it's a great idea, masks.
Oh, the Japanese, it's cultural that they wear masks all the time. They have for, like, as far as I know, like anybody sick or whatever has allergies, they always wear masks. That's just, it's not a big thing in America. It might become a bigger thing here. In America. I mean, are there going to be obviously other pandemic outbreaks beyond COVID? Yeah, sure. Science has been saying this is guaranteed. We're actually doing more forestation to the rainforest and other places. We're discovering species and plants and other sort of things that humans haven't encountered before. This is the same thing that happened when, societies have met in history. I mean, the smallpox outbreak with the Native American, so as long as when we start encountering these diseases, we're not going to use distance. I mean, so this stuff, is it going to happen again? Yeah. So, I mean, hopefully not soon.
Regardless.
Hopefully, yeah. That's we're going to be better prepared to stop it from going. But it is a very real danger going in.
And so I think that though, and I concede certain grounds. I just think that, I think it's a long road to recovery is my ultimate point. And I think that we're looking at a year to 18 months before things start even moving at the right pace, in my opinion, and even how cons get it down, because I think there's going to be a lot of experimentations, and I think things are going to fail, and some cons are going to do really well. Yeah. Because I think that unfortunately we're not going to know exactly what happens, and also I think like photos with cosplayers and all that stuff is going to have to be tested very, very touchy, for lack of a better word.
Well, they just had golf. They're having a golf Comic Con down there right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I was saying earlier, you know, the guy, what's his name, the guy who played Flash Gordon, he's down there. He's actually doing photo ops and things like that. And there's masks being worn, and there's celebrities there. There's actual celebrities that are actually there, and that's where I kind of sit back and I go, well, as this goes, and if everybody kind of runs the same playbook, and if it's working, and if everybody does the same playbook, I can actually see us being conventions running at some sort of modified normalcy.
Yeah.
Before the end of the year.
Yeah, I think
I
it's
can see
going to be an
that.
experiment. I think it's going to be an experiment, and I think it's going to be, you know, very touchy go. Make one modification if that works. You add something else. If that doesn't work, you remove it and all that stuff. But on that note, and obviously we just tackled a lot of stuff from everything from you know, Silverline to inking all the way to what is Friar Rush and then COVID and Kickstarter here. I mentioned COVID twice. I do want to give both of you an opportunity to promote what you got, because I know you got other stuff going on beyond that, as well as obviously where can people find a Kickstarter, where can people find both of you on social media. I know, John, you have a website, and Aaron, you have a website too. From my understanding, you got some other cool stuff going on as well, both of you.
Yeah. I can start first. I mean, besides doing Fire Rush, I'm doing my own comic, Godlings, which you can find it all over Facebook and Instagram. I'm still working. You can find it on Webtoons. So if you go to Webtoons and type in Godlings, you'll click on it. It is 12 issues. I am 2 issues away from being done, so it'll be a complete story. So I know 12 is sometimes an investment, but know that it's not going to continue forever. It's going to be an ending. It's going to wrap up. There's no continuation of it. I do have a store. I think it's Humphres Illustration at bigcartel.com. That's my store. And I think if you go on my Facebook, you can find it. You can find my Facebook on the Aaron Humphres or whatever. Instagram's ALH3810. That's my handle. You can find and follow me there. Webtoons, and then of course Silverline, and I'll be on the Silverline stream tonight, which it starts 6:00 my time on Pacific Standard Time. So wherever you're at, tune in. YouTube. I think it's on Twitch, all of those. And I'm not sure what we're talking about.
We're talking about the
it'll be
difference
comic
between
books.
We're talking about the difference between comics and graphic novels, and does it matter?
There you go. That sounds like an interesting
I'm glad it's
conversation.
Not religion. I'm glad it's not religion. So it's not that controversial, right?
No. It's always comic book and fun. It's always fun conversations, that's for sure. So yeah. If you guys get a chance, tune in. I mean, we'll have some. We have always have great conversations, a fun time on those. So.
And then what about you, John? Where can people find you, and what do you got going on? I know you got a website as well.
I have a website. It's more of a portfolio website, so I'm going to be like, don't. And I haven't really updated it in a while. I need to. I'm working on getting a shop together. I'm thinking about maybe, having that set up here before June. But you see on the screen it says the Artistic Viking John Martin. You can type in any simulation of that, and you can find me pretty much on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or I have a Patreon page that I need to pay more attention to. But as things go, I'm actually going to start throwing a lot of content on that. Some stuff that you don't see, some behind the scenes stuff, and I'm currently inking Wolf Hunter, which is another book, Silverline book, which is going to be really cool. And of course, then I'll be right back on inking issue number 3 for Friar Rush.
And as I stated before, this book is fully funded. Obviously, if you back it now, you're going to get the book. There's a lot of cool stuff coming down with it. There's a bunch of add-ons. Obviously, if you just type Silverline on Kickstarter, it'll pop up. If you type in Friar Rush, I'm pretty sure it'll pop up. If you type in Rolling Man, it will pop up on Kickstarter.
And both books are completely done. They're completely
Yeah.
100% done, ready to print.
Yeah. So we've had, I think, 100% track record of getting our stuff on time. So once you pledge, once it's coming pretty fast afterwards.
So for those who are always concerned about that, that is something to know and understand that this book will get into your hands. Roland has legitimately put everything out, and me and him have spoken, and he's the one who obviously, John actually reached out to me, and then Roland got Aaron to show up, which is good. So I will personally hold Roland accountable for any mishaps. I'm just letting you know. So you get yelled at. It's totally because of me. But having said all that, I've been saying it with everybody, is that you have to support indie. As soon as my video comes back, hopefully it'll go back in a second. I don't know if I'm, as I was saying, you have to support indie. And that means you have to support economically, and in particular, you have to back Kickstarters. So if somebody has a Kickstarter, you like what they're doing, you have to back it, whether you're backing digital or you're backing a physical reward, or you're pledging $2 and without any reward. All money is helpful. All of it matters. It is a big deal. I typically encourage people, if you don't have all that much money, you have a little bit of money, back digitally, because even though it's not physical, and obviously a lot of these counterfeiters want to do physical stuff, a digital backing is still better than nothing, and it can be very helpful because if like 30 people back digitally, it gets closer to your goal. But if you're in a situation where money is tight, and let's be realistic, COVID has done a lot of damage to people. People have been out of work. People are also in more of a saving mode. People are concerned about, where the next meal is going to come. Also, people, take care of your loved ones, take care of your spouse, your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend. Take care of your kids if you got them. Make sure your mortgage is paid. Make sure your rent is taken care of. Make sure you got electricity, internet, food, water, shelter, all that stuff before you even consider backing. Because at this stage, it is important to make sure you are good before you go and help somebody else. And also make sure you're good for the next month too. And if that's the case, then all of these people have social media. And so you should be following, engaging, sharing their social media if you cannot physically back something. If somebody has an email list, you should be signing up for that. You should be following Silverline Comics on Twitter and Facebook. You should be checking out their website, silverlinecomics.com. It's super helpful just to know who's working for them and all that stuff. And obviously a lot of social media is on there because that does go a long way, especially if you're in an economic hard time. You can't back a Kickstarter right now. And I'm sure Silverline has an email. I think they do, right? Email newsletter.
It's on the website. Yeah. It's on the website.
Yeah.
So you should obviously subscribe to that because that'll keep you informed of everything that's coming out. And so I am encouraging everybody to obviously do both if you can, but more importantly, and if you're in an economic hard time, definitely follow people on social media. It goes a long way, and it is super important. And on that note, I think that's a wrap.
Well, yeah. I want to add something to that also, is that also if you talk with your brick and mortars about backing the Kickstarter as well, because there's a retailer's package, which is something Silverline does, because we firmly believe in the LCS is the cornerstone of this of the comic industry, because that's where everything goes. That's where we first bought our first comic. That's where we got the books that we said, hey, we want to make comics. So talk with your retailer as well and be like, hey, there's this right here. They have a retailer's package. Check it out. You may be something you want to carry.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And so obviously, for people out there who are seeing this, definitely throw that to your retailers. Just point them in the right direction, and you never know. Somebody might say yes. Especially with everything that's happened, and possibly the exodus of Marvel and DC shutting down last year in 2020. I think that sort of shifted some retailers in that direction. And on that note, I believe that is an official wrap.